So one of the things I find myself talking a lot about off air is that, man, they better not bury any possibility of a debate between Joe Biden and Marianne Williamson and, yes, Robert Kennedy. Whether or not you agree with him or like him, I don't. Fact of the matter is, he's polling in double digits in some polls. By any metric, that gets you on the debate stage. So it doesn't matter what I think of him personally. It doesn't matter what I think of his ideology. If that's where you're at in a Democratic primary, there should be a debate and your voice should be heard, right? Obviously, I ride with Team Marianne, but it looks like the strategy from the White House, ignore, these people don't exist. It looks like the strategy from the media is downplay. These people barely exist and they're irrelevant. And they're just going to try to plow ahead and have a coronation for a guy who can barely complete a sentence and is clearly going through some difficulties related to his older age, right? I'm not saying that as a knock on him. I'm saying it as an objective fact. And so it feels like oftentimes we're alone shouting in the wilderness. Like, hey, have a debate, have a discussion, do something. This is unacceptable where we're at right now. You can't just let this guy cruise by. And I'll be honest, I'm in favor of a law. I'm in favor of a law that mandates debates now. Because we got all these, they're all dodging. Like, the number one candidates in both respective parties are all dodging it. Okay, so in steps Charlamagne. Now, I like Charlamagne. Sometimes he has takes that I disagree with, but the reason I like him is because not only sometimes do I agree with him, but also you can tell he's authentic and he's telling you what he really thinks. I mean, that's most of what it takes for me to be like, okay, cool, interesting, you know? So Charlamagne chimes in. Now, look, Charlamagne is much more pro-standard Democrat than I am, right? But he makes good points here. So this is in Mediaite. Charlamagne claims it's whack that the DNC might not allow primary challengers to Biden. Quote, let's have an effing discussion. So I would play the video for you, but I've noticed certainly with the Breakfast Club, they knock you on copyright like every single time. Now, I don't know what it is with Brilliant Idiots, his show with Andrew Schultz, but they have the quotes here, so I'm just going to go ahead and read the quotes for you to tell you exactly what he said. Radio and podcast host Charlamagne the God weighed in on President Joe Biden announcing his plans to run for re-election in 2024. The conversation took place on the Thursday edition of the Brilliant Idiots podcast, which he co-hosts with comedian Andrew Schultz. Both Charlamagne and Schultz were going over hot topics during the show, and they played a clip from Biden's video announcement. So this the part they show is where Joe Biden's like, freedom's been an important word. And he just, the sort of vague, like, well, I'm in favor of good things, Jack. And so they respond to it. Quote, Democrats are goofies, bro. Look how goofy y'all are, Schultz said. Y'all really judge Trump and people who like Trump when you got this motherfucker running again? Freedom, Biden said in the video. Personal freedom is fundamental to who we are as Americans. There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred. That's been the work of my first term to fight for our democracy. And then Charlamagne chimes in and says, America is a sham. I don't give a fuck what he says. To protect our rights, to make sure that everyone in this country is treated equally and that everyone is given a fair shot at making it, Biden continued to say in the video. Again, platitude. It's not like, we're going to do universal health care. We're going to raise the minimum wage. Like, it's just like stuff like that. I'm not listening to 3 minutes of this shit, yo. The world is in shambles, Charlamagne said. Schultz asked Charlamagne if he was embarrassed to be a Democrat, to which the radio host clarified that he identifies with neither party. One of the show's producers was asked if he would be voting Biden, to which he responded, I think we could use a fresh new person on the scene. Quote, that's why it's whacked that the DNC won't let nobody primary. They won't do no primaries next year, man. Do a fucking primary debate. Put Joe Biden up on that stage with Bobby Kennedy, who's challenging him. That's referencing Robert Kennedy Jr. And Marianne Williamson and whoever steps up to the plate, and let's have a fucking discussion. The reason I'm covering this is because this is like one of the only people outside of the independent media political world who said this. Nobody else has said this. I mean, of course you have the typical, me, breaking points. Like, there's been people in the online political world have said it. But people not in the online political world, nobody's saying it, nobody's thinking about it, nobody cares. And so here you have Charlamagne, who's saying the exact correct thing. Now, by the way, he's sympathetic to Marianne. He likes Marianne because he's had Marianne on the Breakfast Club a number of times, and she always freaks him when she goes on there. So Charlamagne respects Marianne. And this is a guy with a gigantic platform and a lot of influence, and massive credit to him for actually speaking up on this issue. And everybody needs to start speaking up on this issue. You cannot do what the Democrats have done over the past few years and pat themselves on the back and suck themselves off about democracy. Well, there's a democracy, and Donald Trump's against it, and we're for it. Yes. That's their whole thing. Their whole thing was like, you gotta vote for us because democracy, bro. And then when you get two primary challengers who are polling in double digits, you're like, what? I don't even know who they are. I'm not going to talk to them. I'm not going to talk to them. I don't know who they are. I'm not going to. Let's coronation. No, screw your coronation. And how many polls have we seen? Only 26% of the country wants Joe Biden to run again. It was like 70% of the country that was like, don't run Joe. A lot of people, by the way, are citing his age, which I don't specifically agree with. I agree that he's in mental decline, and that's the issue. It is tied to his age. That's true. But if somebody was an older candidate and they were there mentally, that's totally different. I could support that candidate. You know, we supported Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders was really old, but he was sharp and he was there. With Joe Biden, he's not. And putting that aside, of course, ideologically, he's still an incrementalist. He's still very centrist when we need real change in this country. You got to have a debate. You got to have a discussion. The media has to give Marianne fair coverage. And if they're not going to do it, we have to try to make them do it. We're going to work on a campaign, man. We have to do it. We have to work on a campaign. I haven't worked out all the details. I haven't made all the phone calls that you need to make and the conversations that you need to have, but we have to do like a hashtag Biden must debate thing. And we have to get everybody on board, and we have to pressure the media into covering it. We have to pressure the White House to respond, because if they're going to be this disgusting and if they're going to be this hypocritical, well, then at least let's get them on the record as being the scumbags that they are. At least let's get them on the record so that everybody knows it's all out there in the open. Because there's plenty of people who are walking around, probably the majority of people are walking around out there, and they don't even realize Biden does have an opponent. Why? Because the media keeps downplaying them and not covering them, and Biden keeps insisting, like, I'm going to waltz right through. And we're getting no help from official power centers. Even Bernie Sanders bent the knee on day one to Joe Biden. Pathetic. He didn't ask anything in return from Joe Biden. He didn't continue to play footsies with, hey, Marianne's making some good points out here, just so you know. It was immediate, bend the knee. And look, the younger generations are not having that, man. They're not having that. When you have 60 to 80% of the country living paycheck to paycheck, over 500,000 homeless people, when you have the three wealthiest people owning more than the bottom 50% combined, this is not something, you can't continue like this. We're in a new Gilded Age that's worse than the old Gilded Age. More income and wealth inequality than ever before. 500,000 medical bankruptcies every year. 45,000 people die every year because they don't have health care. You can't, the same old is not going to cut it. And they're trying to pull the wool over your eyes and act like there's not even a debate to be, a discussion to be had. There's not even any other candidates, bro. There's not even any other candidates. Oh, man. Oh. Shout out to Charlamagne. Dude, keep on it. Stay after it. You know, get your friends involved. Andrew Schultz, get comedians involved, right? People in political media, get involved. We gotta force their hand. It's amazing that we have to like push for the most basic stuff imaginable, but that's where we're at. We gotta play the cards that we're dealt, right? And so keep fighting, because this is unacceptable. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.